Hello everyone, welcome to a special episode. We're going to go and take a look at the thumbnail art for various different things on this channel. Some of this art's made by me, some of this art is made by other people, and I will try to go ahead and give credit where credit is due, but most of the art's made by me. And you can kind of see a progression of the art over time as we go and go through some of these. And so the reason why I want to do this is the thumbnails are really, really small, and sometimes they're actually really cool. But you can't tell because they're really, really small on YouTube. So we're going to go and flip through a couple of these and just kind of show off some of the different thumbnail art. So this is the one for the very popular series, Age of Gladiators. It's about as basic as you can get for a thumbnail. But at least it's a thumbnail. You know, it's something, but it's extremely basic. You just take the start screen and then you slap a number on it, and there you go. Suddenly you have a thumbnail. It's really not very impressive at all. But it worked, and it got the message across pretty clearly. This is the Take a Peek episode for Bionic Dudes. So this is where I was starting to learn a little bit more about my software for what I could do in my software. And you can see there's a little bevel and emboss on the TAP in there. And then I tried to go ahead and match the colors a little bit with the colors of Bionic Dudes. While still making it stand out a little bit. I think there's actually also a drop shadow in there. It looks like I added a drop shadow as well. But again, still not very complicated. Not overly fantastic. But it got across the point really well. It was really clear, really bright. It popped against the background. So overall, it's a pretty good thumbnail. This is the one I made for Doom, for the demo. This, unfortunately, ended up a little darker than I would have liked. The demo part ended up a little darker. The Doom was fine, but the demo came across a little dark. Again, this is just the title screen, but you really wouldn't see a whole lot on the title screen. What you'd really be seeing is the Doom in the thumbnail portion. When it's really small, you're just seeing Doom. And then you can see there's something to the left, but unfortunately the red and black-ish on the dark red just didn't work very well. There wasn't enough pop there, unfortunately. But you can tell I was getting better with the program at this point, starting to make more interesting things happen. This is Duskers, so it's wallpaper from Duskers in the press release, meshed with a crisp blue, the word, font. A crisp blue color on a crisp font. And then this is actually a version that I made. Because there was a version that someone else made and he just couldn't keep up with the demand of the channel. So I ultimately had to take over. And the difference is between the one that I did and the one that he did. Well, I was able to replicate the Duskers little thing in the center there. It actually came down to I changed the color in the top right. So instead of being a bright white, it's kind of now like a bit of a gray mixed in there. So it's not as hard on the eyes. So that's ultimately what I did. And actually there's just a little bit of an outline. I put a satin around the EP30 and around Duskers. I put a satin to give it a little bit of a border. You can't really tell. It's like 1 pixel thick, but it helps bring it out a little bit more. This is one for Evoland 2 that I did. Again, this was one that was started by someone else, and then I went ahead and finished it. Instead of a satin on this one, I had a satin to Evoland 2. And then I did a drop shadow on the EP50 up in the top right. And this is actually part of a cinematic. The background is part of a cinematic that happens early on in Evoland 2, and I thought it looked like a great action shot to create a great thumbnail. And these last two thumbnails really do a really good job. They pop really well. They're high-quality thumbnails for sure. This is one of the earlier ones I did for Factorio. Now you can see actually this one I was a little more proud of at the time because I managed to get the Factorio gear to cast a shadow on the word Factorio. But it wasn't itself, it was not casting a shadow over Factorio. Instead, I gave it a very small glow, and ultimately the glow goes unnoticed in the thumbnail. So it's those tiny details like this that can pop out in a series like this. It's just an action shot from the game, ultimately. But it worked out really well. Now, the bottom right, you have to leave the bottom right largely untouched because the timestamp pops in over that bottom right. So you'll see a theme in a lot of these where the bottom right goes uncovered, and that's very much so on purpose. So this Groundbreakers tap, I tried to do something a little bit like in theme with the colors of the game, and it just ended up being awful. I look at it now, and it's just, this is an awful, awful thumbnail. So, it's just, let's just move on. It's bad. It's really bad. This one's also really bad. I was really stressed when I was making these, by the way, if you can't tell. All you really get off of this one is that it says tap, and if you don't know anything about the channel, it's completely meaningless. So, you have no idea this is for Hyper Bounce Blast, which, again, these are some really bad ones. I was in a really stressful time when I was making these reviews and thumbnails, which a little unfortunate, but this is a really, really early thumbnail. This was actually made by Aaron, and this was during the Hearthstone campaigns, actually, when we were doing those, when all of the campaigns were still available. This was the Hearthstone campaigns, and I was pretty happy with what she did, because it did a really good job of just kind of appearing and being fairly clear. I do kind of wish the words were a little bit bigger. I do feel it was a little bit small, but otherwise, you know, it's fairly clear. This was a really basic one for Pro Gamer Manager. Ultimately, I wasn't super happy with the thumbnail, but the series was really popular, so I stuck with it. It just wasn't a very complicated thumbnail, and it was one of the basic ones. You'll see a couple more that ended up in a similar style. I was trying something new, and ultimately I moved away from that style because I just wasn't happy with how it turned out. And this is one of those where I just wasn't happy with how it turned out ultimately. But the series was popular, so I didn't change it. This was another one where I was not happy with how it turned out. Rags to Riches for Basingstoke, Football Manager 2016, FM16. I tried to take the title screen of Football Manager and then the icon of Basingstoke and then put Rags to Riches out there. I think the color I chose for Rags to Riches is awful. It doesn't work at all. Honestly, black text would have been better. It's just, you know, it's not great. But again, it's what I have. It's what's already made. And ultimately, the series is going to end soon anyway, so it's not like it's that big of a deal. But it's something to look at and look towards the future and be like, that's bad. How do we make it better? And I already have a lot of ideas for how to make it better for future thumbnails that I make. This one I thought was really cool. I really enjoyed making the Stellaris thumbnail. I thought it ended up looking really nice. And I like the color. And then, of course, the bevel and emboss is on this one. And then I took this over the world map, the galaxy map of the whole thing while it was paused. I just said, you know what? Let's take the entire ring and we'll make it into a thumbnail. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. I think it looks good. It conveys the message really well. And I'm ultimately, again, I'm very happy with it. And I'm very happy with the fact that we basically won. Like, there was really nothing that was going to stop us in the Stellaris campaign. So both the Stellaris campaign went really well, the thumbnail went really well, and I was really happy with it overall. This was back when I was doing speedrunners. So this was made quite a while ago. We did a bevel and emboss with a drop shadow. With all the different colors that are in this specific thumbnail, I had a really hard time coming up with any color at all, that would pop reasonably well against the background. So I went for basically an off-white, a grayish, silverish off-white, in the hopes that maybe that would work, but then you get to the right side of the screen and it doesn't work. So I had a really hard time making this. I really should have just chose a better picture, I think. I really should have just gone for a better picture, but ultimately I was still fairly inexperienced when I made this one. It was quite a long time ago. The Star Wars Rogue one, I'm actually really happy with. I'm pretty sure I made this one. Maybe I didn't make this one. Maybe this one was from Otamaku Clan. I can't remember. But this one's really cool. It takes a bit of a pixelated sci-fi approach on what is otherwise a very high-tech game. Star Wars Rogue is a great game. It's a fantastic game. And the way that tap comes in there, I would like it to be a little bit bigger. Again, I don't think the tap is big enough. But otherwise, I think it's a great-looking thumbnail. This is a Stardew Valley thumbnail. So again, this is part of the whole experiment of putting the icon of the game in a separate spot. And I don't think it works out at all. This thumbnail in particular is very special because it actually showcases a triple-digit number, which we don't see very often in this channel. No guarantees we're going to hit triple digits, by the way, in Stardew Valley. I'm not guaranteeing that at all. But this is one of the rare ones where you can actually see how a triple-digit number actually works with the thumbnail. And I think ultimately the color is fine, but it's really just kind of bland. Very bland and basic and not very interesting to look at. Oh my, that's itty-bitty. So this is what I did. Tag the Power of Paint, I think is what it was called. And I literally did this one in Paint. I took a screenshot from the game that was just the blue paint loading screen thing. And then I used the spray paint tool in Paint to try and give this a very spray painted feel for a thumbnail, for an icon. And it looks a lot better as a thumbnail than it does here as a standalone. That being said, I don't like it. I think it looks way too amateur. I think there's a much better way of producing a spray-painted look than what I did. But at the time, this is what I thought would create the best spray-painted look. And so I went with it. It's the only thumbnail I've ever done in Paint. I'm going to be honest. The only one I've ever done in Paint. And it just didn't end up quite the way I wanted it to, unfortunately. This one was far more recent. It's for 1-800-Monsters. And you can see that now it's become more refined. The way that I'm making these thumbnails has become much more refined. I'm trying to get the colors to work a little bit better. And I'm trying to make sure that the words themselves pop out really well from the background. So in this case, we have a shot from the game 1-800-Monsters, obviously. And then we have a stroke around the edge of the letters themselves. So the black outline, that's the stroke going around it. And then we have a drop shadow behind the stroke to give the stroke a little bit of a softer edge. And a bevel and emboss over everything to make everything just look a little more interesting to the eye. That it's not just plain text. So this one, while I wasn't happy with the game, I am happy with the thumbnail. Ultimately, it does seem to be a little dark when you look at it in thumbnail form. And I'm just now noticing the S and the 0 here merged together, and that's a big mistake. That will annoy me. But otherwise, I think it ultimately does a really great job. It's crisp, it's clean. I think it looks good. This one is from the Last Federation. This is before I really knew a whole lot about the timestamp. So when you see this, you'll see the Last Federation, Lost Technologies, and then timestamp right over tap. It's just boop, there it goes. So it just looks like I stole the the uh the background art, what is it? I said it earlier. Wallpaper. It looks like I just stole the wallpaper and then that's the entire thumbnail. That's not the case. I did edit the picture, but you can't tell that when you're looking at the thumbnail, unfortunately, because again, the timestamp just boop right over everything. This was another fairly new one. I was actually playing with textures for this one. So, Crest is a god game, and it's a very primal game, I guess, is the good way of putting it. So I tried to go for a bit of instead of doing a bevel and emboss, because I do that for so many of them, I tried to get something else in there to make it a little more interesting. Ultimately, I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. I think the timestamp blocks a little bit of tap, which is unfortunate. But I like the texture. I like the way there's a black outline around everything, and then a drop shadow, of course. We use a lot of drop shadows to just give it a little bit more depth. And ultimately, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. It's just a very standard, straightforward picture with a nice little texture over it. This one's from Mitosis. Again, another one of those that I was ultimately fairly happy with. It's just basic bevel and emboss with a drop shadow. No stroke here. The stroke did come in later. There are very few of them that have the stroke. 100 Monsters is one of those. Very few of them have the stroke. Duskers had that. I replicated that. And Evoland 2 had that. I replicated that as well. But very few of these have stroke. Then I did Wormiz. So this is where I was playing with something new. Again, trying something new, learning the program, and seeing the end result, and just putting it out there and seeing what's up. And ultimately, what I did is I took a satin and then I inverted it to create this glow effect with an inner glow as well. I created an inner glow and then an inverted satin to create this glow effect. I think it looks really freaking cool. As a thumbnail, it doesn't work super great. It's too dark. But it looks really freaking cool. It's like this neon sign look. Again, going back to the old style of taking the logo and slapping it up in the top left with some really basic text. It doesn't work out very well. It's not very pretty at all. This is for the new XCOM 2 series that's coming out. So this is the series that started yesterday, as of recording this. Started on Tuesday. And this one, I'm experimenting. I'm putting something new in here. So I went for the Inner Glow inverted satin with a very small stroke. You can see like a 2-3 pixel stroke in there. Go ahead and zoom in. You can see a stroke around the words. And then what I did is I tried to take more of maybe a movie approach, I guess, is one way to put it. I went ahead and took each of the individual 4 soldiers that we started with. So left to right, Aaron's Closet, Mr. Wasabio, Siam I Am, and Yami Bakura. 4 of the most avid watchers, 4 of the biggest fans of the channel, 4 of the people I hear from a lot for this channel, honestly. 4 of the most dedicated fans. I took them and I slapped them all side by side with their respective soldiers in their action poses. And I tried to create something that was a little bit of a movie look. And then I had to, unfortunately, put the episode number somewhere. And so I was like, do I put it top left or do I put it top right? I eventually decided to put it top right. I think maybe top left would have been better because Yami Bakura's action shot is really cool. With the sniper rifle pointed up and out like that, I think his picture looks the coolest out of everyone. And then I decided to put the number over it. I think that's a bit of a mistake there. But I think that the number works better in terms of picture balance. It works better in the top right than it does in the top left, but ultimately, The top right picture, I think, was far more interesting. Now, whether or not this actually worked as a movie-esque picture, I don't know. But this has been the newest thumbnail that I made. And again, just trying to experiment with something else, see if I can make my thumbnails more interesting without being overly complicated. And I think this one might be just a little too complicated. Also, it's a little too dark. I noticed when I'm looking at it in thumbnail form, it's just a little too dark. So I really need to get away from the blacks and the dark blues, I think, and really stay more towards the whites. I think that would work a little bit better. So that's something that I need to really work towards in the future. I've been creating a lot of dark thumbnails recently that look cool when you look at them in full picture form, but ultimately I think I need to get away from the dark colors a little bit more, which is a little sad because I do like the way these turn out as pictures, but as thumbnails, they just don't work. So those are the thumbnails. Let me know which one's your favorite, guys. I would love to hear from you. Which ones do you like? Which ones do you hate? Honestly, tell me which one is the worst. You won't hurt my feelings at all. Not in the least. If this is the worst thumbnail out of all of them, tell me, please. I want to know. Because I like to know what you guys think so I can make better and more interesting thumbnails in the future. And then, of course, tell me which one's your favorite. Is this one your favorite? I like it, but do you? Maybe you guys all hate it. Maybe it's awful. I have no idea. But let me know. Tell me which one's your favorite. They all have names, so they're pretty easy to identify. Maybe this one's your worst because it's so small. I don't know. But that's it, guys. So thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around, and thanks for checking out the art for the channel. Some of this is fan-made. I tried to give credit where credit's due. Most of this I make myself. Most of this I try to learn as I'm going along. A lot of this YouTube channel has been learning and improving and making myself better. And I've had a lot of different comments in the past saying, you know, hey, this channel's really great quality in this area. You know, and when I hear that, it's like, oh, thanks. You know, it's glad that someone has told me this because I'm not sure whether or not what I'm improving is what people actually care about. And a lot of it's been audio quality. I try and get the audio quality to be really high quality here. And now I'm working on thumbnails. I can't do a whole lot more with audio quality without dropping a couple $1,000. At this point, I'm using about as good as stuff as I reasonably can. I've already put about $1,000 into my audio equipment as it stands. And so now I am working on getting proper visuals set up, and we're getting there. We're getting there. I'm happy with my improvement in creating thumbnails, but if there's something I can do to get better, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. So put that in the comments down below. Again, thanks for watching. If you like it, give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It'd be kind of weird if you're watching this and you're not subscribed to the channel. You know, that would be a little weird, because this is all about channel art. And share with your friends, honestly. If you share it on Facebook, you share on Twitter, that is the best thing you can do for the channel. Honestly, it really is. Thank you to Amphit for being a Patreon supporter. And I will see you all next time with more of just different channel stuff. So, thanks for watching. And let's get to it. Let's get to it. There it is. DFTBA.